On the recovery effort in the Nepalese earthquake disaster. The death toll has risen to 6,200, but the fate of thousands more in remote areas remains unknown. The Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, has also confirmed all Australians known to be in Nepal have now been accounted for. Australia will contribute another $5 million towards the disaster relief effort in Nepal. Now, this takes the total contribution to $10 million. The United Nations says 8 million people have been affected, with at least 2 million in need of tents, water, food and medicines over the next 3 months. Ian Wishart is the CEO of Plan International Australia. The group have 250 people on the ground in Nepal. Now, welcome to The Drum, Ian Wishart. Can you give us an update of the situation on the ground?
Yes, well, we're 7 days into this disaster and Plan International teams are reaching far-flung areas and to do those assessments. And we're just discovering that what happened in Kathmandu is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a massive disaster, and the devastation in far-flung areas, particularly near the epicentre, is severe. Now, the aid is getting out there. It started, from my organisations, with hundreds of items per day. It's ramped up to thousands of items per day leaving the warehouse. It will get to 10,000s per day of items leaving the warehouse, but it is a huge logistics exercise to get this relief equipment out to the people who need it.
So just to clarify that, Mr Wishart, are you saying that the reports about the slowness of getting aid out are not accurate, or that our expectations are unrealistic?
What I'm saying is the size of this disaster is very, very large, and so it's just a massive task. And Nepal is a very poor country and it suffers from poor infrastructure. So what we see happening, say, at the airport, some people might blame that on bureaucracy or people not trying hard enough. It's actually that, there's not enough places to park the planes, there's not enough equipment to unload each plane fast enough, there's not enough warehouses. So it's a pure mechanical and logistics problem that has to be solved.
And your group has been working on the distribution of shelter units, shelter kits,
right,
to protect people from the elements. How many of those have you managed to distribute?
Well, we've sent hundreds in the first day. Tomorrow there's 1,500 going to one of the very targeted areas that's been struck very badly, and we have thousands more coming in from Dubai.
Ian, it's Chris Berg here. Obviously, there's a really, really short-term need for specific aid, but at what stage do we start thinking about long-term how we can get the country back on its feet, or how we can get the region back on its feet again?
Yeah, well, the first 3 months of a big disaster like this, a lot of it's about that emergency need, temporary shelters, food and equipment. But then beyond that, you have to start thinking about what is the long-term plan. Can we help these people to build houses that are more earthquake resistant? So it's about building back better than was before. So it's a transition that you go through over time, but we also need to be thinking about how do we strengthen Nepal as a country, because a weak country like this suffers badly during an earthquake because the infrastructure is just not strong enough.
Ian, Darren Barnett speaking. Congratulations on the work that you and your organisation do. I've read some background facts today on Nepal, and it said that the National Parliament spent the last 7 years trying to negotiate a new constitution, that there have not been local government or council elections since 1999, that corruption and nepotism are rife. How do you work through those barriers and in that tough environment?
Yeah, I mean, developing countries around the world, do have a range of problems like this, and international aid organisations like Plan International, the first thing we want is independence when we're working in the country. We don't want to get caught up in that kind of thing. We want to be able to work directly with communities, and that's what we do. It's the bilateral donors or the government donors that need to be working with the government of Nepal on what is called governance and getting their politics to work better, and that's a job for foreign affairs. We certainly need, and we see countries who get their affairs in order move ahead better.
Ian, it's Holly Ransom here. For Australians who are watching at home and who've seen the devastation this week and are asking themselves, how can I best help? How can I contribute? I'm seeing these news stories about aid struggling to get there. What can we do as everyday Australians at home to make a positive contribution into helping in disaster relief?
Well, what I'd urge you not to do is to try and put a container of material together to send across. That's an emotional response. It will take a very long time, and it'll just add to the logistics bottleneck. I mean, what I would urge is, to give generously to cash donations to, the major organisations who are responding. I'm pleased to say the appeals are going very, very well at the moment, so people are giving, and that's fantastic. The Australian government has also announced the $10 million, and $4 million of that is going through the large 6 international relief agencies that are responding there on the ground. So it's going well at the moment, but we still need a lot more support.
Now, Mr. Wishart, when natural disasters of this magnitude occur, it often exposes weak flanks in our capacity to respond quickly or comprehensively. Do you think that there are any lessons, long-term in terms of the way we do respond, or is it primarily a question of providing resources when they're needed, as you've said?
I do think the world needs to reframe how it responds to these big disasters like the one in the Philippines, the Haiyan one, and this one. I mean, aid agencies like Plan International, we're not, wealthy enough to have, big logistics assets like helicopters or these big planes. But I do think the world needs to apply more of its global resources for a rapid response. And I think there's some work that could be put into that.
Okay, Ian Wishart, we all wish you Godspeed in getting all these resources in caring for the people in Nepal who've suffered such enormous loss. So good luck, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
The ABC